Okay, wonderful. Great. Thank you so much for coming out on this Saturday night to see our production of Struggle for Existence, Darwin's Dreams. I want to give you a little bit of background to this play that you're going to see and tell you a couple of things you need to know as audience members. This play was created by my colleague, Catherine Badgley. She and I both teach together at the residential college at the university. And if people don't know the residential college, you should. It's a wonderful, wonderful place and encourages interdisciplinary teaching and collaborative work with its faculty. And so the idea of a paleontologist and a theater professor working together on a course is something that the RC, thought nothing of and supported. And so we worked together to help create this play. It was originally performed in the fall around this time in 2006 as part of the evolution theme semester. And it was performed in this very space and employed an environmental staging where we moved to different areas in the museum for different parts of the play. And so you will be getting up and moving. Catherine and I will be your usher leaders, and we'll let you know when you get up and move. This play focuses on the struggle in Charles Darwin himself, on the leading up to the publication of Origin of Species. His concerns about how the world was going to receive his work, his concerns about the controversy over religion and creationism versus evolution, also how his work would be interpreted or misinterpreted. And so what you see is the man really working on his, not just his ideas, but his own sense of whether the world is ready for his ideas. And I think that Catherine's done a really wonderful job of showing that. And so we encourage you, tonight is a discussion. You're very welcome to stay for the discussion. There's no intermission. The play runs 90 minutes. And then we'll take a short break and then meet together for a discussion for anyone who would like to stay. And I would like you to turn off your cell phones and your pagers. And please recognize that we'll be getting up and moving from your chair. So if you could put any bags that you have in England in the spring of 1850.
Darwin?
She went to church, Mr. Darwin.
Would you tell her I'd like to see her when she returns?
Certainly, sir.
Oh, now what have we here? Some new species of insect? Post office, haven't returned yet?
Not yet, sir. She'll be home in a few minutes. We took a shortcut so the boys could follow the bees across the meadow.
I visited 9 flowers and then flew to the garden. I visited 10 flowers and then flew to your study.
Oh, well done, boys. You must be covered with pollen. What flowers did you visit?
Daisies and iris and azaleas. Now we're going to build a fort with Francis.
Oh.
How are you feeling today, sir?
My stomach is giving me trouble, Parslow, but I shan't let that get in the way. I must finish this manuscript within a fortnight. Leonard, go fetch your father a pinch of snuff.
Is there anything you need me for, sir?
Yes, if you would post these letters. And you may want to take Francis to his riding lesson this afternoon. Thank you, Parslow. Ah, there's a good lad.
What a busy gathering. Boys, your father needs time to write. Get some biscuits from the kitchen and then you can play outside until it's time for your lessons.
Leonard, you count the number of bees in Mama's garden to the right of the sundial. Horace, you count the number of bees to the left of the sundial. At lunch, you can tell me how many you found.
Thank you, Pastor.
How was the service, dear?
A fitting memorial for Annie and Mary and baby Charles. And for us. I wish you had been there. It was just Reverend Innes and the family.
Dear, you know that how I feel. You know that I cannot express such grief in a church.
The children and I take comfort in the Lord's blessing for these departed members of our family.
Their departure doesn't speak well for the Lord's benevolence. I cannot see as clearly as you do the evidence for beneficence on all sides of us. There's far too much misery in the world.
I was consoled for the loss of our 3 children. I wish you could feel consoled.
I must finish this book.
Your work is making you ill. Shall I get you some tea?
No, it'll pass. I'll feel better when this wretched manuscript is done.
Reverend Innes and his wife walked back with us. He wants to talk with you about the accounts for the Coal and Clothing Club. They stopped Greek Lovics passing on the road, and here they are.
Dear, could you find the accounts book? It must be on the shelf somewhere.
Oh, yes. Here it is.
You come back to the Innes have gone. I would like your help with the manuscript.
All right, dear. Reverend, Mrs. Innes, it was so good of you to walk with us. Do you need a cup of tea?
No, thank you, Mrs. Darwin.
We'll only be a few minutes. That is, if I can interrupt Mr. Darwin from his writing.
If you'll pardon me, I need to look in on the kitchen.
Morning, Reverend, Mrs. Innes. How fares the world today?
It is a good day, by the grace of God. How is your health, my dear Darwin?
Oh, it's been better, but it's also been worse. I want to thank you for the memorial service for Annie and the others this morning. 8 years. And it seems like just last week.
Your presence was missed, as you know, especially by your good wife.
Emma knows that I have my own forms of remembrance and a deadline to meet.
Perhaps you don't realize how much your presence would mean to her.
Mrs. Innes, no one loved our departed children more than I, and Emma understands fully my devotion to her.
Very well, sir.
Now, about the Coal and Clothing Club.
Oh, yes. I finished the accounts for the club in this. We spent £85 on the winter necessities for 23 families. That's up from £15 from last year. 2 families, the Chapmans and the Smiths, have exceeded their allowances for the winter, but I think we can cover their expenses with the donations from this month. They are both very deserving families, as you know much better than I.
Absolutely. And the gratitude is immense for the generosity of the Down community.
Yes, John Chapman and Peter Smith worked very hard over the winter, and their eldest sons are already looking for summer work.
We hope to see you at the vestry again. I need your liberal views to keep the rest of them from becoming too complacent.
After I finish my species book, I can do nothing else until then.
Mrs. Darwin tells me you created a grand theory about our life.
No, this theory has taken up 20 years of my life, and Emma has been a great help. You shall be among the first that will get a copy of the book.
And what does your theory say about God Almighty?
Well, that his laws are both efficacious and wasteful.
Do explain.
The evidence for remarkable design occurs throughout the animal and plant kingdoms, as many others have shown well before me. But the process of natural selection whereby these designs were achieved is long and tedious, and countless lives are wasted in the process. Every generation faces an intense struggle, and the majority are losers.
That is a rather dim view of our Lord's great plan.
Perhaps the Lord's view of us is similarly dim.
Oh, gosh, Darwin, your mind has been addled by indigestion.
Of that you can be certain, Reverend. Tell me, when does the parish fair occur this summer? I want to exhibit my pigeons again.
Mid-August.
Would you be a judge of the small livestock division again?
If you need me, we shall certainly be here. I'm happy to be of service.
Very good. We'd best be going now. Come, dear. We must stop by the Lobbocks on the way back.
Thank you for your visit. Always a pleasure.
God's blessing be upon you and upon your family.
Thank you, Reverend. Mrs. Innes, as ever. Goodbye. How could such wastefulness and cruelty be evidence for God?
Are you ready for some tea, Charles?
Indeed. I'm on my conclusion now, but it's heavy going. I must list the objections of the critics at the same time as I summarize the relevance of my theory. My wretched stomach.
It will be so wonderful for you to be finished. It has been such a burden for you.
I've spent my whole life on it. And still hear my father's judgment that I will never amount to anything. I only fear that it will not be good enough.
I have confidence in you, my dear.
Would you read something for me?
Yes.
There are certain passages that need your careful eyes and ears. Yeah, let's start with this one.
Shall I read aloud?
Yes, so both of us can judge the wording.
I do not deny that many grave objections can be advanced against the theory of descent through natural selection. I have endeavored to give these objections their full force. But Charles, why draw attention to the objections with such force when your book is so full of evidence?
So that no one can accuse me of failing to think it through. The evidence for my theory is overwhelming. Anatomical similarities indicating common ancestry, the sequence of fossil plants and animals showing ever greater divergence with time, each continent with its own sequence of related plants and animals. The evidence is enormous, but the critics will be looking for any possible weakness. Owen has already declared as much. I must demonstrate that their objections are minor compared with the evidence.
I see. It is a good strategy then. Nothing at first can appear more difficult to believe than that complex organs and instincts were perfected by the accumulation of innumerable slight variations, each good for its possessor. Nevertheless, I'm adding a comma for you, dear.
Good thing.
Nevertheless, this difficulty cannot be considered real if we admit three propositions. First, that gradations in the perfection of any organ or instinct either do exist or could have existed. Second, that all organs and instincts are ever so slightly variable. And lastly, there is a struggle for existence leading to the preservation of each profitable variation of structure or instinct. The truth of these propositions cannot be disputed.
Cannot be disputed.
It is clear and powerful, dear. Remember how Annie liked to look over your shoulder as you were working?
I have not forgotten. Not a day goes by that I do not recall her bright voice and loving face.
It is so bleak that all this variety in design should result from constant struggle. Our humanity is so remote. God is so remote.
I have not made any conclusions for or against God. My book is strictly based on the evidence and argument about the daily and material processes of life. It is not a statement about God.
But your readers might think otherwise. I see the implications.
My dear, I have given my version of the truth to the best of my ability.
Can we live by the truth, Charles? Our next visitor has arrived.
Mr. Darwin, Mr. Huxley is here.
Huxley? Oh, I hadn't expected him so early. I value his company, but I really must finish this passage.
I shall come for him after a short visit, so you have time to finish before lunch.
Show him in, Parslow. Ah, my dear Huxley.
Good day, Darwin.
Parslow, will you fetch us some fresh tea?
Certainly, sir.
All week, I've been looking forward to this visit, to see how the long-awaited masterpiece is coming. Hooker tells me you're almost finished.
It is true, I'm on the final chapter, but it's driving me mad to list the objections to my theory. I've half convinced myself that no one will believe it.
Now, from the pages I read earlier, I am confident that your species book will earn the lasting gratitude of all thoughtful men. Natural selection, laws of variation, on the imperfection of the geological record.
There's 3 chapters are already at the publishers.
14 chapters. Impressive. When will you be done?
Oh, if my wretched stomach holds out, I shall finish my abominable volume within the fortnight.
Abominable volume. Come, Doc. Even though I can't agree with every part of your theory, still, it is a noble work. To start a whole new epoch in biology and blow fresh wind into the mustiness of current thinking about human nature.
You exaggerate, I'm sure. I have not made any claims about mankind in this book. It's far too troubling to extend my theory to human origins.
But the same forces that acted upon the rest of nature must have acted upon humans. I know you believe this. The world should see the full implications of your theory.
Someday, Huxley. But I'm far from seeing the full implications of my theory clearly myself. Ah. Thank you, Parslow.
Another point. Your theory of descent insists on gradual changes through many intermediate forms. I'm not convinced. Why can't nature make leaps in forms?
2 objections. I don't see how selection, acting on existing variations, could result in a totally new form in one or even several generations. And descent without multiple transitional forms sounds to me like special creation. No, Huxley, the gradual accumulation of small changes and local adaptation together explain the living world.
There's no evidence that humans arose gradually from a monkey ancestor.
Not yet. But I predict there will be. It is only the gaps in the fossil record that stand in the way of our realizing that descent with modification is gradual. You'll see. Think of all the tertiary sequences that have yet to be prospected for fossils.
Perhaps. Until then, I remain a skeptic on this point. Still, I eagerly await the day when your book will create a firestorm in the Linnaean Society. I can already hear Owen and Wilberforce plotting their attack. They will defend their created archetypes to the end, but it's just hocus pocus. Remember, Darwin, some of your friends are endowed with a degree of combativeness which will stand you in good stead. I am already sharpening my claws and beak. I am ready to go to the stake if necessary.
Oh, Huxley, would I have your confidence and your ability to smite all humbug, however great.
You've done for biology what Lyell has done for geology. The history of all species will be understood through natural processes, relieved of religious dogma. Adherence to scripture to explain the natural world will become mere anachronism, prejudice.
I have not set out to remove the Creator from nature.
But your theory makes him completely unnecessary.
Good morning, Mr. Huxley. I am pleased with your enthusiasm about my husband's book. I too am proud of him. But some of us still look to the Creator for guidance and comfort.
Mrs. Darwin, please excuse me. I understand the impulse to grasp for a lantern to guide us through the dark periods in our lives, but our wish for the lantern does not constitute proof of its existence.
Huxley, please.
My principles to teach, my aspirations to conform themselves to fact, not to try and make the facts harmonize with my aspirations. Your husband has with the same devotion elaborated his theory to be consistent with the facts.
Huxley, we can speak of this later.
A visit with you was never dull, Mr. Huxley.
Mrs. Darwin, I have no wish to offend.
Mr. Huxley, how is your family? Mrs. Huxley? Your son, he must be just 2 years old now.
Mrs. Huxley is very well, thank you. And Noel, he's the delight of our life. His health is weak lately. Yes, he's quite worried.
Well, what is the matter with him?
His condition, as the doctor, is quite baffled. It may be scarlet fever.
That is terrible. I am so sorry to hear this, Mr. Huxley.
Indeed, there is no greater pain than witnessing the suffering of one's children.
I shall keep your family in our prayers.
My wife and I appreciate the sentiment, Mrs. Darwin.
Mr. Huxley, we must let Charles finish his work before lunch. Do come see what the boys are building under the lime trees.
Of course, Sandy. Well, show me what's in store for us with Noel.
Lunch will be ready around 3, Charles.
I'll just go over this passage one more time. please.
And I am ready to go to the state if necessary.
Are we merely a fortuitous conquest of
And I am ready to go to the state if necessary.
Are we merely a fortuitous concourse of atoms? You will be a disgrace to yourself and all your family.
Of God Almighty, I am already sharpening my claws and beak, and I am ready to go to the stake if necessary.
Are we merely a fortuitous concourse of atoms? In his latest book, Charles Darwin seems to think we are.
How can you say that? How could you even have read my book?
Bishop Samuel Wilberforce is the next speaker on the program. Any contribution from Mr. Darwin commands our attention, and his latest book, On Origin of Species, is a most readable work, full of facts in natural history, old and new, of his observing and collecting, all told in his own perspicuous language, and all glittering with the colors of fancy and the lights of imagination. We feel as if we walk abroad with Mr. Darwin, that we are the favorite object of his attention as he lays forth his theory. But here, our pleasure terminates. For when we turn to his argument, we are immediately at variance with him. The conclusion to which Mr. Darwin would bring us is this, and I quote, I should infer that probably all the organic beings which have ever lived on this earth, man of course included, have descended from one primordial form, H4N4. This theory pervades the whole volume to find that mosses, grasses, turnips, oaks, worms and flies, mites and elephants, infusoria and whales, dinosaurs, truffles, and men are all equally the descendants from the same aboriginal ancestor. This is a startling conclusion.
Nonsense.
Is it credible that a turnip strives to become a man?
Bishop.
Mr. Darwin freely dismisses the difficulties with his theory. When transitional fossils are lacking between a fully adapted descendant and its proposed ancestor, he calmly tells us, oh, throw in a few hundreds of millions of years, and all these changes should be possible. But Professor Owen has made a careful osteological examination of the human family, and he has determined that man is not and cannot be an improved baby.
That's right.
That man is the sole species of his genus, the sole representative of his order. Bishop Wilkes. Another of Mr. Darwin's favorite ideas is that his facts contradict the theory of divine creation. Now, Mr. Darwin writes as a Christian, and we do not believe him to be one of those who retain in their hearts a secret unbelief which they dare not vent.
I have no secret unbelief. I am openly agnostic.
Mr. Darwin declares that he applies his scheme of natural selection to man himself. But God has endowed man with supremacy over the earth. The power of articulate speech, the gift of reason, free will, and responsibility, and the indwelling of the eternal spirit. All of this is utterly irreconcilable with the notion of the brute origin of man. Has wandered from the broad highway of nature's work into the fanciful jungle of assumptions is no small evil. How do we account for the wonders of nature? By the stupendous fact that all of creation is a transcript of ideas in the mind of God. The next speaker is Mr. Thomas Boxley.
On the contrary, Bishop Wilberforce, Mr. Darwin's book is a noble contribution, not only to biology, but to science itself. In Darwinism, we find the best explanation yet for the diversity and antiquity of living forms, their similarities and differences, and the geographic distribution of plants and animals. No living naturalist has produced a better monograph than this result of Mr. Darwin's labors. A man lays before us the results of his 20 years investigations and reflections. We must listen, even though we be disposed to strike. The theory of natural selection gives a reason for the many apparent anomalies in the distribution of living beings in time and space. And so far, the theory must be admitted to have an immense advantage over any of its predecessors. The investigations of another 20 years may enable us to say whether the modifying causes in nature are competent to produce all the effects that Mr. Darwin ascribes to them. As to Professor Owen, with his advanced physiological mind, he has failed to note the full anatomical similarities between man and the higher primates. In cerebral structure, a sign of man's higher intelligence, man differs less from the chimpanzee or the orangutan than these do from the monkeys. This is but one of the many close similarities between man and the apes. who shall number the patient and earnest seekers after truth from the days of Galileo until now, whose lives have been embittered and their good names blasted by the mistaken zeal of bishops and biblical literalists. Esteemed theologians lie about the cradle of every science and the strangled snakes beside that Hercules. And history records that whenever science and dogmatism have been opposed, the dogmatists have been forced to retire from the battle, bleeding and crushed, if not annihilated.
Mr. Huxley, are you related to an ape on your grandfather's side or your grandmother's side?
Mommy.
Lord hath delivered him into mine hands. If I could have a miserable ape or a grandfather, or a man possessed of great means and influence, yet who uses these faculties merely to ridicule a grave scientific discussion, and I affirm my preference for the ape. Yeah.
That's not unusual, especially when there are more than one chick and the larger one might crowd out the smaller one.
What will happen to this one?
We can try to put him back in his nest if we can find out which one it is. Shall we do that?
Yes, yes! This is where we found him.
Oh, and here's a nest with one large chick. This could be where your chick belongs.
Shouldn't we give Albert something to eat before we put him back?
No, I don't think so, Leonard. We cannot feed him as well as his parents can. The parents both create a special milk in the back of their throats, and the babies feed on that.
Ew!
Would you like to see the nest?
Look how much bigger the other chick is. Will Albert be alright?
No, not if he stays weak and keeps falling out of the nest. He'll die before he ever grows up.
Leonard and I could sleep out here till Albert gets bigger and put him back in the nest when he falls out.
Oh, nature is not that simple, Horace. Only the strongest babies survive. Your chick might have an inherited defect, which prevents him from growing quickly, or he might have been hatched much later than the other chick. Even though we take good care of these pigeons, 1/4 of the babies die by this stage. Go on, put the chick back in the nest. Nature may be cruel, but death is an important part of the process of perfection of each species.
I don't want Albert to die.
Don't worry, Leonard. He's likely to live.
Now look at these two. What differences do you see?
This one's bigger and speckled. The other one's mostly white.
Yes, I want to develop a line of white tumbling pigeons. So I look for healthy white chicks that can tumble, and then I breed them for their chicks.
What do you do with the rest?
Well, either the hawks get them or I have to kill them.
Kill them? Why?
How else can I prevent them from breeding? We don't want to be overrun with pigeons that we don't need. If I want strong white pigeons that can tumble, then I have to limit the breeding of the undesirable birds.
What do
All our domestic plants and animals were so created.
What about Albert? Will you kill him?
No, Leonard, but he might die naturally. Nature does the same thing as breeders do.
Is that why our little baby Charles died?
I don't know. Baby Charles succumbed to a disease that was conquering both the weak and the strong.
You said he was different from the rest of us.
Yes. Mentally slow. And a sweet child.
Do they ever prevent people from breeding, like you do with the pigeons?
Good God!
Oh, not here in England, Leonard. No, and we never shall. So don't you worry about it. Now look, boys, these pigeons could use more water. Would you go and fetch some for them? Parson, would you see if the boys need any help?
Certainly, sir. Then I'll take them through their lessons.
Papa,
Etty, come in. How are you this morning?
a little better than last night. I've been sitting by the flower gardens. You would love all these nonsense.
You are right. Shall we take our tea there after lunch?
Mama said you might like some help with your writing. Do you want me to take dictation for you?
Dearest Eddie, I would like that immensely. How good of you. I've been feeling poorly today, but the thoughts are rushing together that I can hardly hold on to them. Here's a pen and ink. I'll get you some fresh paper.
I'm ready, Papa. It's like writing a letter to yourself.
I have many unanswered letters to myself.
What chapter are you on?
15. No, the last. But in the middle. Oh, you can help me with the phrasing. Because sometimes my first statements come in out in an awkward form.
All right.
There is no obvious reason why the principles which have acted so efficiently under domestication should not have acted under nature. In the preservation of favored individuals and races, during the constantly recurrent struggle for existence, we see the most powerful and ever-acting means of selection.
What are the favored individuals and races?
Well, these are the animals and plants which survive at the end of the year because they have an advantage over the weaker individuals.
And who does the favoring?
Nature does. as when the taller seedling in the garden shades the shorter one. Shall I go on? The struggle for existence follows from the high geometrical rate of increase which is common to all beings.
Is such a struggle inevitable, Papa?
Yes. I'll put that word in so that it reads, the struggle for existence inevitably follows.
All right, continue.
More individuals are born than can possibly survive. The grain in the balance will determine which shall live and which shall die, which variety shall increase in number and which decrease and finally become extinct.
I'm starting to see how your theory is at work around us. This explains why Annie and Sir Charles died, doesn't it? I fear our family will become extinct because so many of us are ill.
Oh, Etty, our family may have inherited some weaknesses of constitution, which caused Annie and baby Charles to succumb to disease. But our family will not become extinct. We have the means to eat well and see the doctor. We are a normal family, despite our difficulties.
If we are normal, then I should hate to think of what happens to those who are less than normal. I'm ready to go on.
Where were we?
A grain in the balance will determine which individual shall live and which shall die.
As individuals of the same species come into closest contact, come into closest competition with each other, the struggle will be most severe between them. You know, it's like the carrots in the garden. More of them sprout up than can possibly grow in the bed. We don't weed them, they'll all be stunted.
That's our interference, not nature acting separately.
Quite right, my dear, but we exert a similar winnowing influence.
On carrots, maybe, but not on other people. Otherwise, we let orphans and lame children die.
My theory is about nature in the wild, not about civilized societies. We do not struggle like the birds in the wood, or the carrots in the garden. And we have obligations to help the weak and misfortunate in our midst. But we are not entirely free of this struggle either. Nature may seem wantonly cruel to us, even though it does lead to successful adaptation. Shall we go on? The slightest advantage in one being over those with which it competes, or better adaptation in the slightest degree to surrounding conditions, will turn the balance.
I'm glad we don't live by these rules. Some of your theory seems tragic or desperate.
If I am right, the struggle improves species in the long run.
Will your readers think you're advocating the struggle?
I'm not advocating natural selection as an ethical principle.
But if it's so pervasive, then where do our human characteristics of charity and kindness come from?
Well, natural selection may favor charity, especially among close relatives. But more importantly, we are not and must not be subject to nature's laws. Every society can form its own principles.
Shouldn't you say that in your book?
I don't think so, Etty. My book is about the origin of species over eons of time, and nowhere have I given instructions to society. That should be perfectly clear.
Your theory will be useful then.
Oh, I certainly hope so, Etty. It should improve our understanding of nature and open up whole new fields of inquiry in the sciences of inheritance and genealogy, geology, agriculture, even psychology.
Etty, Miss Thorley is waiting to hear your French essay.
Thank you, my dear. You've been a great help. Emma, would you see if the post has arrived?
I will go and check.
Huxley, would I had your confidence and wit. The closer I get to the end of this book, the more it weighs upon me. It's like confessing a murder. I've tried to explain several heretofore separate facts about the variety and history of life. My theory weaves together these facts, uniting the whole great extended family of beings into one tree of life. A few laws explain how the daily struggle leads to endless beautiful forms. But this vision is bright and dark at the same time. Our notions of fairness do not conform to nature's laws. We must realize that the weak will survive and may even perpetuate their kind. But our moral improvement is not based upon the limiting of reproduction, but rather upon the advancement of reason and learning. Progress, however, is not inevitable.
3 letters, 2 meals, and the newspaper. This one's from William.
Oh.
He's enjoyed seeing us at Easter. He's doing well in maths. Rowing on the cam in the morning. Has not yet run short of money.
We are fortunate to have such a good son. He will amount to something in this life, unlike his father.
Charles, you're gloomy this morning.
Ah, this one's from Murray. Oh, he eagerly awaits the remainder of the manuscript. If I can send him the rest within a fortnight, then the book will be published before the end of the year.
You are almost finished, are you not?
Well, we'll see who's finished first. The manuscript or your poor old slave. Oh, is it an accursed evil to be so absorbed in a subject as I am in mine?
It will be a great accomplishment and a huge relief for you to finish.
I could never have done this without you, my dear. Oh, this one's from Hooker. Apart from you, my dear, Hooker is the one soul who has given me constant sympathy and advice for my book. Oh no. The chapter on geographic distribution that I sent him is gone. Their children mistook it for drawing paper and scribbled all over it. Some pages have already been burned in the rubbish. Mrs. Hooker has copied 2 of the pages, which are here enclosed. Oh, mercy.
I'm sure Hooker is mortified.
There must be a copy of the old manuscript here.
What number is it?
It's chapter 11. How can this be?
Chapter 11? Here it is. Thank God.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, to scare. No, Charles. I want you to have a short rest.
I must write to Hooker and tell him that we found the original manuscript and that
After your rest, your walk, and then lunch, you will feel much calmer. This afternoon, I can write Mr. Hooker so that he can actually read the handwriting.
Etty would like us to have tea in the garden after lunch.
Splendid, dear.
Thank you, my dearest. Oh.
Charlie. Nefse Louise, yaman sevmedi.
Ben kıskanıyorum.
Açam ben de, açam. Sen! Ben kıskanıyorum.
Look, she is pregnant.
Ben kıskanıyorum.
Açam ben de.
First, let's look at this
Açam ben de
boy.
ya.
Your fine mother letting your son run wild,
Dostum!
raising up a great addition to our society.
Ne derim John?
Look how close set these eyes are.
Ne derim Charlie?
4.8
Wrong,
centimeters.
Church. Suckeras!
Long, low head.
Ben kıskanıyorum.
11 by 15.2. Sure indications of feeble-mindedness and latent hostility.
Is there a cure for these slaves?
There's nothing wrong with this boy. Leave him alone.
We can do nothing for the boy, but we must declare his mother unfit for propagation.
Ne derim ya?
Those who are physically and mentally unhealthy must not perpetuate their suffering in their children.
Will she need the procedure then, Doctor?
Yes, I'll prepare the anesthetic.
Guard! Guard! Take this boy.
Nasham, John! Nasham! 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 Suckeras! Suckeras!
She is ready now.
We lead the world in our breeding program to increase the number of our healthy children and limit the breeding of the undesirables. The improvement of our race requires that the degenerates perish.
But it goes against the natural instincts of these people to have children.
Yes. And that is why we must make sure they do not have so many children. They cannot help themselves. So we must help them. You've heard of Charles Darwin, have you not?
Yes, we studied Darwinian evolution im Gymnasium.
Our theory of survival of the fittest comes straight from him.
No, this is an abomination.
His work is a great inspiration to us.
You cannot use my ideas in this way.
We are reinventing civilized society so that selection can improve our species. He would be pleased to see what we have accomplished.
Oh, nothing could be further from the truth.
Should I revive her?
Yes, and be quick about it. We have another patient waiting.
Get out of here!
Be used in this manner now. Never.